we need to be a step a step in front of it. You almost need to predict, like there's a FO on the horizon. We need to go in and take action.
Understand 100%
Yeah.
that with the data that you have available to you, you can be able to see, okay, well, this has happened, we can expect this, and in order to minimize the problem, we need to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So that data becomes incredibly powerful then.
It's proactive use of data. And I always say we don't identify stress, we identify risks, because once you get to stress, you're already in trouble, So we need to identify that risk before it becomes stress. I think apart from the agriculture side, the people we work with around the world, for me, is the most important thing. And it's so whether you're sitting somewhere in the woods in Chile with a family around a fire, whether you are in California playing a game of poker with some of the farmers or playing music with them over a weekend, it's different cultures and different ways these people operate, which I love. I love the cultures. That being said, nothing beats South Africa, right? Yes. I mean, South Africa is home, but I mean, South Africa there's something in us, there's something on the soil here that makes it, that's what it makes it worth returning to.
It's you so often hear exactly that, maybe said in different ways, but it boils down to that.
Starting to play an active role in the industry in terms of providing scientific solutions to detect the early detection of stuff like leaf roll virus or something like HLB, or I think there's a lot that technology is still not used for. So I'm very excited to get involved in that, but I think on the ground products now evolving, things like color detection, blemish detection, getting more accurate fruit counts, again, getting everything we do even more accurate to the point where this is what growers are using. So we can't afford not to be accurate. So our biggest challenge up to now is providing technology that can be trusted. And often in AgTech, they say, AgTech is an overnight success that took 20 years to build. So a typical day in the orchard is literally working with these growers, walking, helping them size, training them, looking at the data, dissecting the data to knowledge, and then helping them to implement it from a practical point of view. Now we are using the iPhones to do fruit sizing and detecting fruit sizes and fruit variants and helping the growers with yield estimations. But if you ask me what I do for a job, I've never seen what I do as a job. As it is, it's a passion.
Liaan, thank you for joining us on a quick...
very short notice.
Yeah, asking you in a walk past and you said yes, so thank you for that.
Part of life.
So welcome to the Lucentlands Podcast, Liaan. You travel around the world a lot, so we are actually quite privileged to manage to find you and get you in front of a mic. Please introduce yourself. Tell us how you would tell people who you are and what you do, please.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I'm Liaan Janse van Vuuren, currently the global head agronomist and grape lead at Aerobotics. It's an international company. We use technology, drones, iPhones to really help growers to identify risks. But if you ask me what I do for a job, I've never seen what I do as a job. As it is, it's a passion. It's, working with growers, being out in nature. Nothing really beats that. Yeah.
And you do this around the world.
Yeah, mostly.
Tell us what you've been doing and planning to do in the last 2 months previously and 2 months from now. Just to tell us about your program.
It's up and down between spending time in California, Central Valley mostly, with our citrus, table grape and nut growers. Being back home for a week and a bit, then going up to the Eastern Cape for Farmers' Days, now here. Luckily, today we are close to home, and then being home for a few weeks and then off to Australia to see growers again, and for a 3-week stint, and then back for a week. Then it's the CRI symposium in Natal, which we're very excited for, and back for a week, and then it's the SAMAC symposium in Nelspruit. And by then it's almost the end of September. then everything is growing and going on in the Western Cape and the rest of South Africa. So then it's time to put your head down for the season, and then it all starts over again.
So what do you do when you are off the plains and you're on the farm and you are speaking to growers? What do you actually do?
And obviously, when you tell people of all these exotic places, and it is awesome to go there, they think that traveling is glamorous. It's not.
No. Being in an airplane for 20 hours at a time is not the best. But once you get off, there's almost a source of energy that fills you. And currently, when we go out to growers, we're in a space where at Aerobotics we started off just using drones and analyzing trees from a multispectral and thermal point of view. Now we are using the iPhones to do fruit sizing and detecting fruit sizes and fruit variants and helping the growers with yield estimations. So a typical day in the orchard is literally working with these growers, walking, helping them size, training them, looking at the data, dissecting the data to knowledge, and then helping them to implement it from a practical point of view. There's a lot of technology out there. If it's not practical, it's nullified. So we pride ourselves in really going out to the growers and making sure that they can get the most practical knowledge from the data we provide.
Okay, so we have some idea what Aerobotics is. You want to maybe just take it back a step and tell us about the company and how it developed?
Well, the company, we're actually celebrating our 10-year existence this year, and the company was founded by James Patterson and Benji Melcher, and James is a farm lad from Clanwilliam. His parents are still farming out there, and the whole process was to build something by farmers for farmers. So the company literally started out on top of a coffee shop in Kalk Bay, and currently we've got a big office in Cape Town. We're sitting with a team of 60 plus, of which the majority is engineers, with the idea to listen to our growers, take it to the team, and they build. So in effect, we're builders. I've got a small part in making sure the farmers understand how to use the technology. We've got teams around the USA. We've got teams in Portugal, Spain, Chile, Australia, New Zealand. So the whole of South Africa. And like I said, it's 10 years down the line, growing good. And I always say pressure is a privilege. So it's a privilege to have pressure to improve, and it's a privilege to have pressure to grow. And so far so good. And
what's your history before Aerobotics? Because I think if you mention Liaan Aerobotics,
it comes with a price, but a good price, luckily. No, I like most of the people growing up with me, I grew up in Nelspruit, so grew up close to the Kruger, grew up out in nature most weekends, and I actually was planning to do law or medicine, and then luckily I had to train, so I went for a run in Franschhoek one weekend and came back, and I told my parents, there's stuff growing out of the ground with grapes. Postdoc. Never mind. Yeah, so went down the line of what do you do to study. So found out university has a course, BSc, viticulture and enology. So studied viticulture, made wine, spent time as a viticulturist, but always wanted to farm. So then ended up starting to farm citrus, working with tea. From there, went down the fertilizer advisor route, chemical advisor route. Did my master's in horticulture 10 years after I graduated. And then ended up diving down the technology. So the dream was born out of, fertilizer plays a role, chemical protection of pests and diseases plays a role, but how do we optimize what we do? How do we all fine-tune dial on the radios? How do we use that little button to fine-tune our productions? That's why I met James through Robert, his dad, and we started working with Aerobotics as a customer. And then a few years down the line, moved over to join the team permanently.
Okay. Well, thanks for giving us that background, because I think that knowledge, the variety of knowledge that you have from there, when you are standing on a grower's farm, when you are...
You've been in his shoes.
Yeah.
You've been there, and you have knowledge. You can actually not just talk the talk with him, you can walk the walk with him, and you have common ground that you can take from there into this kind of almost sci-fi technology stuff that you guys do, because you have to lead somebody into that who has no idea.
100%. And I mean, it's we've everywhere where you are with these days we are now, you learn how to use different pest products and how to look at irrigation and fertilizer. But it all comes down to two things, and that's a pair of feet. It's two shoes leaving a footprint in an orchard, and that's the most important part of the farming operation. So for me to have the privilege of knowing, how to farm and work with it, that's how you dial in and bring the AI to the growers to help him. I always say it's not a phone, it's a digital shovel, because the most important thing you can do in the world on a farm is dig a hole, because it will tell you a story of your soil moisture, it will tell you a story of what the tree is doing and what you can expect. So for me, that was part of a bigger plan to get the background, understand the physical part of it, and now go down the line of working further with the growers. And you should never stop learning. I'm an ag nerd, love learning, love being out there. And that's why I say you can't call it a job.
No, and I would imagine that you have some adventures and that you have some funny situations sometimes. When you try to explain to people what you do, they must look at you like, what? And also going all the different you're going all over the world.
Yeah.
That kind of cultural interface that you meet up must sometimes be funny.
Yeah.
You got anything interesting to share on that level?
I think the funniest part of it all is whenever I meet someone and I start speaking, my home language is Afrikaans, obviously. So whenever I speak English, people can't tell whether I've got a South African, Californian, Australian, or Spanish accent, because you are in all these different cultures and you adopt certain things as you go on. I think apart from the agriculture side, the people we work with around the world, for me, is the most important thing. And it's so whether you're sitting somewhere in the woods in Chile with a family around a fire, whether you are in California playing a game of poker with some of the farmers or playing music with them over a weekend, it's different cultures and different ways these people operate, which I love. I love the cultures. That being said, nothing beats South Africa, right? Yes. I mean, South Africa is home, but I mean, South Africa there's something in us, there's something on the soil here that makes it, that's what it makes it worth returning to.
It's you so often hear exactly that, maybe said in different ways, but it boils down to that.
Yeah.
You might leave here, but you leave part of your heart here.
Yeah.
And what I must say is that you being from Nelspruit area, is that once you've been in that bush, I like the beach. I do like the beach, but I feel different when I come back from there.
Yeah, the bush does something to your heart. It quiets you down. I don't know. And I think that's what's the big allure to other people to this country, is they want to experience that wilderness. So we were in California in 2022, and we always think that South African growers are behind in what they do. Well, people might think that. Other countries might think that. But once you're there, you look and you realize that we are leading in a lot of ways. So what are some of those things that you've noticed that you don't have to mention names, just like techniques that we do that put us apart from other people? I mean, first of all, agriculture has changed so much over the past 10 years. The way growers have adopted to do more with less really amazes me. And that's around the world. That's in any part of the world where you go. Your top 20% leading farmers, that's the guys who adopted to technology. That's the guys who took on the challenge and is really doing more with less. That being said, I think, yes, other countries have more expensive labor. We're not nearly as expensive as the rest of the world when it comes down to labor, but we've got different challenges to face, whether it's political environments, whether it's climate environments. But the way the South African grower has took a little piece of land he farms and made it into a little empire always amazes me. The one thing that stands out for me is our personal attention to our trees and soil. Wherever you come to a South African farm, you'll always find the farmer in his orchards, either walking his trees, walking his vines. They still are hands-on. And I think a lot of the corporate structures around the world, you lose that personal touch with your plants. I often say at least once a day you have to touch with your farm. You have to touch the vine or the tree, or just make sure you ground yourself to what you're doing. And I think our South African farmers are absolutely excellent at doing that. And that's why our fruits are exported. The mere fact that we have to export our produce is one of the biggest challenges we face, but still markets are asking for South African fruit because they know what they get from South Africa. So the way we farm, the precision we farm with, the quality we produce, I think that's for me probably the most or biggest return from a hands-on farming approach.
Wow.
Okay. You are here sitting with Aerobotics hat on. So let's go down that road a little bit more. This is a South African company from Africa. When you go to other parts of the world and you tell people this technology, the stuff
from the Western Cape.
From the Western Cape. But you still tell them it's from Africa. They probably go, what? Africa? Can't be. And how it's grown and what it's doing, and what have been the big breakthroughs, and what have been the big and the challenges in the journey to this point?
I think the biggest challenge is the adoption to technology. We've come from a culture where, my grandfather wrote his cattle numbers in the inside of a Lexington box.
Yes. And for the young people that don't know what Lexington is, it's cigarettes. And you used to get a packet of 30
yes.
with a lot of writing space on it.
Almost like a laptop nowadays.
Tablet. You can't write it on a vape.
Exactly. No, and you can't write with a vape. But
smoke signals, perhaps.
Maybe. Adoption of technology, and I'm not talking about, often we think it's the old farmers. It's not the old farmers. It's my generation and younger. That's still, you've been taught a way to farm and you've been taught a way to do stuff. Now you need to bring in phones and drones and new technology and programs and BI systems. It's big to think about it, and it's kind of intimidating to take what you've been doing all your life and now trust AI, trust AI to provide a better solution. So I think that was the biggest challenge. When you're working with fruit sizing, when you're working with export quality fruit, accuracy is everything. We are playing in a millimeter game, or we are playing in a half, small
incremental things,
incremental changes in terms of accuracy. So accuracy is everything. If you take table grapes, for example, if you've got a 1 gram heavier berry, you can easily pack up to 1,000 cartons on a hectare more. So we can't afford not to be accurate. So our biggest challenge up to now was providing technology that can be trusted. And often in AgTech, they say, AgTech is an overnight success that took 20 years to build.
Yep.
So building
we're halfway
trust,
there. It's 10 years.
Yeah, we're almost halfway there. I believe we're a bit more than halfway, but yeah. So getting the growth, the trusted technology was the one biggest hurdle. Being accurate consistently was the second biggest hurdle. And I mean, for me, I think what makes me the most excited is the way we've overcome that. It's having a team of engineers working day and night to bring the accuracy from 1.75 millimeters down to 1.65 to sub-millimeter. If you look at our drone annotations, if you work on a centimeter by centimeter basis, and in opposed to a satellite that works on a 5 meter by 5 meter resolution, that's what. So the way that the engineering came into ag, and the way we've adopted the accuracy and overcome those challenges, I think that's our biggest challenge by far in the past 10 years. And then the bigger challenge, if you look and listen in AgTech, is the way that AgTech companies has started to die out over the past. I mean, in the past 3-4 years, there's about 5 or 6 companies that folded. The fact that we were able to build enough trust in our growers to keep on growing, for me in itself says, one, we're on the right path, but two, we've started to become an intricate part of the farming operations. Yeah.
So yes, we've been around, and I mean, I definitely hear that. And I mean, people talk everywhere, not just in South Africa, abroad. We've heard people talking about aerobotics. Yeah. So you must be making a huge difference to individual growers' results.
And that's what we live for, is changing ag for the better and leaving, again, it comes down to the footprints. So just leaving that footprint.
So tell us about the app, because that's been, I think, the biggest thing for the last 2 years is tell us what you can, what you can't, how does it work?
It's a twofold, you've got a digital way of collecting data. That's the one part of it. Whether you are collecting pest and disease data, whether you are dropping a pin where there's an irrigation line broken, whether you are, just observing leaf color, any data you capture, any task you want to assign, you can do from the app. Working around the world, the one thing that's not always on a farm is connections, right? Cell phone reception, etc. So the fact that the app can work offline is a big must, and that's one of the first things we solve for. I think the most important or exciting part about the app is the whole true fruit concept. So the answer does lie in the truth, and that's your AI fruit sizing. So that's where we actually use this app and we guide the growers to trees, or they go out to a tree and they take pictures within a certain parameter. The app actually guides the grower whether he's too far or too close to the fruit, whether he needs to look at the angle of the phone, and he then takes pictures, 15 to 20 to 30 pictures of the specific crop, whether being citrus or grapes or apples, whatever. And the moment he syncs that data, in the back end, we digitally size those fruit. We detect the belly, we size the fruit, and we give an accurate representation of not only the average size of that specific moment, but also the distribution within the size. We also provide it spatially, because it's one thing to know your size, but you need to know spatially where the size differs to then again go take actions on whether being thinning, manipulating your crop load from a hand thinning point of view. Do I need to get something in here to make my fruit bigger? What is my color looking like? What is the pictures, the mere pictures telling me from a quality point of view? So I think the AI sizing is probably the champion in the app, but the fact that you can then in that area also collect your data like fruit counts, you can then export it to do your harvest estimation. Over time, you build a growth curve to do an estimation or a forecast of where your size will be. So if you go in and size at 1/2 inch or at 10 millimeter fruit size, you can already know you are going to end up at a 64 millimeter fruit, or not end up at a 64 millimeter fruit. Especially with the weather now. If you've got a warm February and you don't have fruit growth, it can be flagged early enough so you don't end up with fruit 10 millimeter less than the rest of the orchard. Because in our game, size is money. If your fruit are too small, you'll miss a market and your return on investment won't be as big as you need.
So this monitoring starts from when the fruit are still smaller and immature, and it works up towards harvest.
Yeah, so the idea is that you go to the same spot weekly, take pictures of the fruit, and then you see the fruit grow. Okay. You can compare it over seasons, but in effect, you also build an in-orchard growth curve, which you can then use for future forecasting.
So yeah. How long does it take can you from your very first photo scan already get pretty accurate data, or do you need to use it for a season?
No, I mean, one or 1,000 scans the data and the values there. I mean, from the first scan you do, you'll immediately see, where you've got spatial variance from a size point of view. If there's industry growth curves, like in the citrus industry, you can use an industry growth curve from your area to then start forecasting. And then over time, fine-tune it with your own data.
And do you guys tap into that data from industry bodies and things so that it becomes part of the platform.
Yeah. We've got a customer success team, and their one sole purpose is to make sure that when we onboard a customer, the growth curves, the bloom dates, everything is in the platform, the cultivars, rootstocks, etc. That when we start using the app with our grower, that data pulls through.
Have you guys seen stuff? I know that different varieties of fruit grow different on different rootstocks. Have you guys been able to identify something that was against what the norm would have said? So, for instance, if you plant Autumn Crisp on a Ramsey rootstock, but somebody out there planted it on something else, but all of a sudden that is performing better, yet everybody says, use Ramsey. I'm just taking a random name here.
I mean, we're yet to see or find something big like that. But what we are seeing the most at this moment is the effect our climate has on fruit growth. The mere fact that you can track fruit growth on a weekly basis or from days after full bloom, if you layer your weather patterns on there, if you look at some areas like the Langkloof in the Eastern Cape, they haven't had a single cold unit in May this year, which is worrying because you won't easily make up those cold units.
Yes.
If you've got too warm, so this past season, there were some cultivars that showed up to 15 millimeters smaller fruit. When we tracked it back, we could see the January-February heat wave actually slowed down the fruit growth for those last few weeks, and that's why it didn't end up with bigger fruit. So you had the number of fruit, you had the markets, everything, but now due to the climate, you didn't have big enough growth, and you ended up with a 15 millimeter smaller apple, which is detrimental from a marketing and a return on investment point of view. I think the other thing is on the rootstocks, especially on the grapes, to see when and how a grape grows and when it actually starts going into that big phase of growing. That differs in rootstocks. But again, it's not just the rootstock, it's the soil type, it's the moisture, everything. So this whole three-dimensional approach that you're almost looking at size as your final product, but what brings you out to that point. And we actually have a concept in the app called X lines, or X trials, where you can actually measure the difference in growth between Autumn Crisp on Ramsey or on Richter or whatever. To use the example, I mean, we've seen examples of same cultivar, different rootstocks, and up to 2 millimeter berry difference.
Wow.
Or different applications, different when you're doing your enlargement sprays. How does the one product compare to the other product in the end in your size? You know, so no, definitely. Yeah.
So it takes. Okay, there's a concept that we say, om te meet is om te weet.
Yes.
To measure is to know. But this is taking the measuring to an absolutely fine point. Yeah. And also over time, within a season and between seasons.
Yes.
So from one season to the next. So once you've been doing this for several years, you're going to have such incredible data.
That's the idea. Fine-tuning your growth curve, comparing over seasons, and then imagine down the line, because to measure is to know 100%, but you need to know where to measure and you need to know what to measure. So if you do that correctly, let's say 5 years down the line, we're seeing growth and we're seeing a slowdown in growth. We know 5 years back we had this scenario where we ended up with smaller fruit. So we switch that on and we know immediately we can expect lower growth. So let's go and do something now.
You can be preemptive.
Yes. Yeah. So and that's the bigger aerobotics picture as well, as to not be, because a lot of the products and technology, etc., everything is reactive. We need to be a step a step in front of it. You almost need to predict, like there's a FO on the horizon. We need to go in and take action.
Understand 100% that with the data that you have available to you, you can be able to see, okay, well, this has happened, we can expect this, and in order to minimize the problem, we need to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So that data becomes incredibly powerful then.
It's proactive use of data. And I always say we don't identify stress, we identify risks, because once you get to stress, you're already in trouble, So we need to identify that risk before it becomes stress.
Wow.
Yeah, sure.
Incredible.
So, a question. This is all fascinating. But what did that first guy tell you when you walked onto the farm and says, I want to try this? This is what's coming.
Yeah.
This is what we want to do. The first grower you went to, and you pulled out your phone and says, check this. What did they say?
It's not a biased question, but in my advantage was I was working with these growers for years before that. So I've built a personal trust with the growers as well. So bringing something to them that you put your name on is already for them enough to a certain extent to work with it. But no, the first grower you tell, listen, we're going to come fly with drones and measure the light spectrum on your trees and look at the thermal data and the irrigation. They sometimes see it as a threat. The first thing they think is that you're coming here to show out what they're not doing right. Especially if it's a guy farming for someone, the first thing he thinks is this is the AI police coming onto my farm to show me where I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So no, we've certainly had no, I'm not interested, what's the get off my farm, let's say that.
Yeah.
So no, there was definitely a few big gate closures, but I mean, again, yeah.
And the time that the penny dropped for the first car.
I mean, I think one of the most beautiful stories is I was on a farm and the guy said, listen, I don't have time for technology. I've been doing this all my life. I know what I do. Like, there's no better way of doing it. Years down the line, he's been with us for 4 seasons now, and he's the one standing in front of people and say, listen, you can't go without this.
May you name him?
I don't know, so I'm not going to name him for now. But no, I mean, there's cases where growers adopted and they really bought in. There's a beautiful story of a farm in the X-River in the Dewald where me and the production managers started training a group of scouts. And we started with pest and disease scouting just to know where the pests are at. And it's 4 seasons down the line. They don't have mealybug interceptions. They've increased the cartons they export. And it's not a small operation. So the way that they went about adapting to technology, doing leaf and soil samples post-harvest based in the different zones we provide, to do variable rate application of fertilizer and your recommended post-harvest lime and gypsums, etc., help them to increase their export cartons. Especially with labor getting more expensive, you get growers that will say, I need to have less people on my farm. With the technology, it's a case of not having less people on your farm and replacing the labor. It's empowering the labor more, that for every hour they spend on the farm, they almost bring back 5 hours worth of value for you. So it's not making your labor less, it's empowering them to give more data and more knowledge. And in the end, it not only lifts the energy on the farm, but it optimizes the production.
Yes.
Yep.
Incredible. If you look down the road for Aerobotics, what are the plans? What are you guys thinking of?
Which country do you guys want to get in that you're not in yet, that you think we need to, this market we need to get into?
I think we are in all the major countries, but I think expanding in those countries is the big question. Growing more in Africa, believe it or not, for me personally, it's your home soil, right? So growing more not only in South Africa, but in Africa. And we've started doing that. We're working with growers in parts of Africa, even in Zim, we're working with a bunch of citrus growers now. They're beautiful citrus growing out there. So I think growing in our current markets more, but I think then also contributing to science more. I mean, we've heard about viruses in vines. We've heard about different diseases in the citrus. Starting to play an active role in the industry in terms of providing scientific solutions to detect the early detection of stuff like leaf roll virus or something like HLB. Or I think there's a lot that technology is still not used for. So I'm very excited to get involved in that. But I think on the ground, products now evolving, things like color detection, blemish detection, you know, getting more accurate fruit counts. Again, getting everything we do even more accurate to the point where this is what growers are using. That for me is the bigger picture down the line.
Can you bring your technology into the pack house? Like, for instance, have it connect to your optical scanners?
Well, we've got an open plugin basically. So growers with a BI system or whatever, the data runs in there already. We have a part of our product that we call Fruit in Bin, where growers actually use it in the pack house to scan the bins as they come in to give you an extrapolation of what the size of those fruits in the bin is looking like. It's a product we are still developing and fine-tuning to get it more accurate, but surely something, again, that's where your color, blemish detection, all of it plays a role, and that should feed into your BI systems used in the pack houses.
Okay, excuse me, BI?
It's just the business intelligence. So it's another.
Thank you.
It's where all the color and size and grade and everything.
You know what all these acronyms stand for. You can just be upfront and ask. Okay, thank you.
Sure. No, it's incredibly interesting, and people not using the AI technology today. Well, if you mention to people, AI can do this. It's, but I'm going to lose my job. It's
the terror of AI.
AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using AI is going to take your job at this stage still.
Yeah. I mean, we're not. We can have the best AI in the world. In agriculture, for me, at this point in time, the most important part will still be the operator. Will still be the footprints on the ground.
Yeah.
And again, we're not trying to build something to replace. We're trying to build something to empower.
Yeah.
And I think that's something important to remember. It's like AI should empower what you do. It shouldn't replace necessarily what you do.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
For sure. And taking technology into the fields that you are taking it into, you're really right on the cutting edge, going into uncharted territory. And because technology is changing all the time and AI is coming in.
And people are so skeptical.
Yes. This is changing on a monthly basis, that there's new stuff available and you can do more and you can go further down the road that you could last year. With all of the stuff. So it's also, I suppose, quite a challenge to stay on that cutting edge, as they say, on the bleeding edge. You've got to be there.
Yeah, you know, there's a book called From Good to Great, and in that book they refer to, you know, it's one thing to go from bad to good and good to good, or good to great, but the most difficult thing is to go from great to great and stay there. So being on the front lines, and I'm not saying we're great to great, we're still working to be great, but being on the front lines and being on the cutting edge, it's that's why I said earlier, you know, pressure is a privilege, because it's pressure to be there, but it's a hell lot of fun to be there.
And the things we get to see and experience are so awesome. Yeah. The people we meet,
exactly.
We can talk about the technology all day long, but it's the people we get to meet and spend time with. I always say I feel so guilty going to incredible places and not being able to take the family with.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a tough one.
It is how it is. And I would imagine that when you go to the States, yes, you go for work, but there's all the stuff that you see along the way. It's the journey.
Exactly.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I think we can start wrapping it up. Okay. We've got a question from...
We have a closing question. It's like a random question that someone else has asked, and then we ask you, and then you prepare a question for us for the next person.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so the question is, we got it not too long ago, is that, would you ever consider going vegan?
What kind of question is that? Would I ever consider going vegan?
Yes.
Yeah, I will, when meat is included in the vegan diet.
There you go.
No, I don't have a problem with vegan and
where we work with their food every day.
I mean, exactly, but I mean, nothing. It's maybe the way I was brought up, but no. I'm still very much in love with all forms of meat.
Yeah, I always joke and I say, the other night we were at the function and they gave us lamb shank with a lot of veggies around. So the people sitting, I said, just remember to eat your veggies because that sheep is going to go hungry a little bit later.
Yeah, exactly. Meat is processed vegetables.
And part of coming home to South Africa is coming home to a braai.
It's a stock standard tradition. Whether I come home at 10 in the evening or at 1 in the afternoon, the first thing I do is I say hi to the family, and the second thing is light the fire.
There you go.
It's a part of life.
Oh. There you go. So that was a bit of an ambush question.
And we'll tell you afterwards where it came from.
I probably know where it came from.
But thank you so much. It's been incredibly interesting and very inspiring. And we hope that, there you go. Keep going in robotics because you're doing amazing things.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And enjoy your travels.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chat soon.